Thank you so much for joining me here today at Re-Written Vintage Homestead. It is October 31st and it is freezing outside and wet and gloomy. And usually at Halloween, I release a historical Halloween video. And I will link the last two up here for you in case you're interested. But this year, I just couldn't get into it. And I believe it's because I'm so bothered. I've been trying to figure this all out. And I've come up with some theories that are probably wacky. But I think I'll feel better if I talk about it. And who better to talk about it with than my friends and family. So can we talk about what's going on in our college campuses around the United States and the anti-Semitism that we're seeing everywhere? And what do you think is the root cause of all of this? I have a theory, but let's talk about it. So I'm a child of the 60s, and I was a young girl in the 60s, but if you guys remember, if you were a child of the 60s, the news was always on. It was on all day long, and it was on at dinner time. And if you went to a friend's house or you went shopping or whatever, there was a television with the news on because the Vietnam War was going on during that time. There was a lot of civil unrest during that time. You had a lot of movements for equal rights. Equal rights for Black Americans, equal rights for women, and equal rights for gay people. There was the Black Panther movement. There were a lot of different civil issues that were really, really changing the culture. And the young people, especially, were involved in all of those, but also in the anti-war movement. Free love, drugs, you know, love the one you're with, and do whatever you want, whatever makes you happy. So there was a lot going on. Some of it was, a lot of it was very needed, like your equal rights for women, gays, blacks, all of the underrepresented groups during that time. A lot of it was much needed. Some of it was harmful, and it's just gotten worse. Free love. We've seen people die of AIDS and homes broken up. Children not getting the best guidance that they should. Alcohol, drugs, all of those things have gotten worse as the years have gone on. But you can't deny the music. The music in the 60s and 70s compared to today was fantastic. That's a whole other video, you guys. Okay, so let's keep on track. You had a lot of social reform going on during the 60s and the early 70s. Environmentalism as well. Do you remember Smokey the Bear had a big ad campaign on television? Don't prevent forest fires, and always showing how to take care of your little campsite so you didn't start a forest fire. And do you remember the chief that used to cry because of littering? And so environmentalism was coming out in the forefront too. A lot of this stuff was really, really needed. Let me give you a little bit about my background. I grew up in an apartment complex that was considered lower income, and The interesting thing about where I lived, it was a melting pot. I lived close to a military base and the same town as a military base. So it was a melting pot. And it was fantastic to grow up in because you always had friends there to play with. You always had people there, kids there your age. We had a real sense of community. So we had a family, the Jacksons, they were African American, the Malicks, they were from United Kingdom, Williamsons, they were Italian. Trying to think of some, Hermans were Irish. We were all over the place. And we all loved each other. Grew up together. Did everything together. Went to school together. You know. But we communicated with each other differently than the way young people communicate with each other now. Today, as everybody knows, young people communicate just like I'm communicating with you the majority of the time over the phone. You know, you guys know by the tone of my voice if I'm upset or if I'm not. But when the majority of your communication is texts, a lot of times you may misread someone. You may not get the full gist of what they're trying to say. There's a lot of cyberbullying online. I think that a lot of narcissism and individualism happened when we started doing things like getting vanity plates, and they're even called vanity plates for your car. You can become anybody you want to be on your car. Then it was Facebook. You could be anybody you want to be on Facebook. YouTube, same thing. Yeah, I've created a profile for myself. I can be who I want to be on YouTube. That's who I am most of the time. But we can really change who we are and how we communicate with people and what our values are and what we believe. When we were young, if we needed to write a paper or find out about a subject, we had to write letters. We had to read it in books. We had to go to the card catalog and find it. We had to find a reliable source, interview a person. Like I was saying, back in the 60s with racism, when I was growing up with my Black friends in the apartment complex where I lived, I saw racism firsthand. I didn't need anyone to tell me that we needed to make a change there. I saw it. The same with women's rights. I saw the majority of families that lived in that complex were single mothers. Those single mothers were out trying to work, supporting their families, and they didn't have the same opportunities that men had for education and job pay. So I saw firsthand that needed changed. I went to school with probably quite a few, but only one person who outwardly identified as gay. He was bullied. He had a lot of friends. A lot of people really cared about him, but there were those who bullied him. And I'm sure as he grew into an adult, he didn't have the same opportunities that a lot of us did because of discrimination. So when you're living beside it, when you see it, when you experience it, it's easier to get on that picket line, isn't it? And fight for your friends and fight for your family. You don't need someone to put an idea in your head that you should do something. Also, when, when we were growing up, when we talked to each other, we looked at each other in the eye. Now, you see everyone doing this. They come out of the store, they're doing this. They are walking up and down a hall, they're doing this. They're doing this so they don't have to look at you. They don't have to communicate with you and interact with you. So it's no wonder that the generation that we're seeing now doing a lot of this protesting might have some difficulty with social skills. And I'm not saying they all do. I think there might be an issue there with some, however. So let's talk about exactly what happened as we have learned more. So on October the 7th, Israel was invaded by Hamas. Hamas was elected to be the governing party of Palestine, of the Palestinian people there in Gaza. The people in Gaza, Palestinians, they were living within a border. Israelis live within a border. The Israelis supplied food, water, and electricity to the Palestinians on their side of the border. It wasn't that long ago, if you do some history, it wasn't that long ago that there were many, and by that I mean within my lifetime, there were many different religious groups that lived freely within Israel without borders. Muslim, Christian, Jewish, they all lived together without borders there. So it's not fair to say it's because of religion that they're fighting. It's not. It's because of land. It is because of land that they are fighting. And so on October, and so Hamas has been planning this this couldn't have been something they just planned within 2 weeks, a week or two. It was highly, highly planned out and complicated and executed. And they received financial support from China and Iran and other terrorist groups and other countries. They had to have. And somehow the intelligence of the United States, Israel, failed. We'll find that out later. It's not so far-fetched. Look at how we were attacked on 9/11. Our intelligence failed. It can happen. It happens. And we know now that young people were murdered. Old people were murdered. Babies were murdered. Families were torn apart, kidnapped. Americans, there's still Americans that are being held hostage. Germans. There was one German young lady who was taken from a music concert. By the way, that music concert was in Israel, and it was put on for peace, which I find interesting. Excuse me. I find interesting that the young people of Israel were open to the idea of peace with the Palestinians, and were having a concert and a fundraiser for peace. There was a young lady there from, she was German, but I believe she was also Jewish. And she was kidnapped from the fundraiser, from the concert. Her body was paraded all over in the back of a truck. And her parents still held out hope that she was just being held hostage, but they found her head yesterday. There were people that were saying this is all propaganda. They did not kill babies. Folks, they were wearing GoPros when they went in. They were filming everything they were doing, and it's out there. If you want to look it up, it's out there. It's horrible. The Israeli government showed some of the videos. They invited media in and said, look at what we have here. Look at what happened. Look at what they did to babies. Look at what they did to the elderly. So that there would not be a debate about if it was propaganda or not. If let's just make it small, neighborhood. If my neighborhood was attacked by a group and the babies in the neighborhood were murdered, the elderly people were murdered, taken hostage, I would not be supporting the people that did it. Now, there's a lot of justification that I've heard people saying that when you suppress people long enough, eventually they're going to retaliate. That's true. Normal people don't retaliate in that way. Healthy, normal people don't retaliate in that way. Look at Dr. Martin Luther King. What did he teach us about retaliation? So that argument doesn't fly with me. It doesn't fly with me. You also can't expect to attack a country and not get some type of retaliation. There is no way that they can live within those borders now and have Hamas be the governing party of the Palestinian people. So, you guys, I encourage you to do some history. The Gaza Strip there where the Palestinian people lived was controlled by different countries on and off. Egypt. Egypt doesn't even want to let them in. Egypt has locked their borders and are not letting them in. We're trying to get humanitarian aid into those people. Hamas is trying to subvert that. Israel was supplying those people with water while Hamas was tearing up the water pipes to use for weapons. It's okay. We know they're not good people. Okay. So why on earth are we seeing so much on college campuses and with young people in support of this? And they are actually saying death to Jews. They're wanting total genocide, especially up in New York at those universities. And students I've seen videos of students hiding in the school library because they're being pursued by mobs of people. This was in Russia, but some Jewish people were trying to locate to Russia, and mobs of people were asking to see their passports and were threatening to kill them. This is all over the world, all over the world. And it's hard to believe that, we've not lived through it. And so, but the history is still there about Nazi Germany and how the Jews were treated. It's hard to believe that this is acceptable. What other group in the world, besides white people, would this be acceptable to encourage genocide? It wouldn't be. It wouldn't be. I believe that a lot of people my age did a lot of great things back in the 60s. People older than me did a lot of great things in the 60s for equal rights. and fighting against the Vietnam War. And I think they really felt a sense of accomplishment, a sense of belonging with the groups that they were protesting with, a sense of community, and making a difference, making a huge difference. But I think there were some of them that never moved on. They became more radical as time went on. And I believe many of them got into teaching at college universities, where they could mold the minds of young people and teach them about their history, what they did, and their radical beliefs. And I think there is a whole lot of that on college campuses. Now, we have to have diversity of thought on our college campuses. We have to have diversity of people on our college campuses. But extremism of any one thought process should be questioned. And it should be monitored, definitely. I think that's part of it. I think we have some burnout hippies that want to relive the past and want to change the minds of young people and make them think that they are so intelligent. You know, I, as the professor, I am so intelligent and I'm so hip and I'm so cool and I am so on to current events. And I think they can't fit in anywhere else other than in education. On these college campuses, the ones that are leading these protests, are they even students? Are they students? Are they faculty? Who are they? What is the FBI doing about this? I don't think we're hearing anything about it. Nothing. We don't know if they just came over the border and they're here to stir up trouble. We know our borders are wide open. We don't know if they're instructors. Some of them are. We do know that. We don't know if they're students. We don't know who they are. So what kind of investigation is being done about that? I think that's part of the problem too. But I also think the major reason that we're seeing young people on the side of Hamas and Palestine is because they don't know who they are. So let's go back to my story about where I grew up in the apartment complex. Everybody knew everybody who lived there. If one child did something to hurt another child and a parent witnessed it, they would be on your doorstep letting your mother know. Now, do you think your mother stood there at the door and said, "Not my child, no, you know, or I'm not going to listen to you, you're not going to tell me how to raise my child"? Do you think that's what my mom said? No. She took me in the house and I was disciplined. Parents weren't afraid to go to other parents and say, "I saw your child do this. I heard your child say that. I think you should know your child this or that." Teachers, principals, police officers were treated with respect, because if they weren't, your parents would teach you respect real quick. I tell you what, if I would see my children or my grandchildren holding up a sign saying "Death to Jews," "Exterminate Jews," I would kick their ass so fast. they wouldn't know what hit them. Because that, to me, would just be showing their ignorance, total ignorance. I don't know how parents or grandparents could be paying for a college education somewhere, knowing that these protests were being encouraged by some instructors and being permitted by the governing bodies of the colleges. Okay, so that's my rant for today. I do feel better. I do feel better. You know why I feel better? Because I know there are people out there like you who are nice people. Let's keep an eye on this. Let's stay diligent. Keep an eye on our neighbors. Keep an eye on our communities. Keep an eye on our colleges. And let your voice be heard. Let your voice be heard. You're a taxpayer. You know, that's your money. You're paying for this stuff. So stand up for yourselves and for what you believe in. Stay diligent in preparing. Winter's coming, you guys. I just looked outside and we've got a few snowflakes. It's our first snow, October 31st. It's not going to be much, but the flakes are flying, which is a sign of what's coming. So be prepared, stock up your pantries, learn some new skills, get things cleaned out, get organized, and take care of yourself, and come back and see me.